In terms of the season, 77,381 was the final total. Claps. That's unbelievable. In 77,381 was the final weigh-in number. That just takes a week to clean up. The astounding $14 million was the season total. For the season, we have a total of 73.8111, a little less than $15 million. Parker Schnabel, however, had his stomach in knots as he stared at a chart while his team cheered. He was aware that the gold that had made them wealthy was nearly gone. He decided to invest every last cent in a fresh claim. A fabled location that held the promise of $160 million in gold. However, this pledge was on the verge of turning into a curse that would nearly force him into bankruptcy. 14 million causes for concern. Standing on the edge of his claim, Parker Schnabel gazed out over the destroyed landscape that had brought him great wealth. When you think about it, it's humorous. 8,000 ounces of pure gold had been coughed up from this dirty, desolate earth. That's 500 pounds of yellow gold, which is worth an incredible $14 million. Sand could fill a huge bag. This was the type of season that miners look forward to, one that is recorded in history. With the sense of accomplishment that comes from a job well done, his staff started packing up equipment with aplomb. They had forced themselves to work 16-hour days, operating Big Red and Sleufer, their two enormous wash facilities, almost constantly. Literally, they had shifted mountains of dirt. Water is on its way to you. The water is really pleasant and even. That's thousands and thousands of tons of earth are being processed. A football pitch might be buried several feet deep by that volume. All in order to obtain that valuable gold. This would be a moment for a huge celebration for most people. Parker, however, wasn't like other people. He could feel a chilly knot of worry twisting in his stomach as he observed the grins on his crew's faces. They didn't know what he did. He kept staring at the ceiling during the brief nights in the north because of this secret. The easy gold was gone. Creek Scribner. They tapped out the claim that had been so incredibly nice to them. The easily accessible pay dirt had been excavated, cleaned, and accounted for. What remained was buried farther down, beneath more waste rock, and would take a great deal of time and fuel to reach. In that sense, the mining industry is a terrible game. The ground humbles you just when you believe you have mastered it. Parker has witnessed it 100 times on other crews. They are winning one season and then packing up and leaving with nothing. It is always the same question that divides the winners from the losers. Next, where do you dig? That question was crushingly heavy. They were his extended family, his team, and they relied on him. They had bills to pay, mortgages, and college-age children. His ability to discover gold was directly related to their means of subsistence. Furthermore, he had established a reputation that was bigger than life. He was unstoppable as a young prodigy in mining. Season after season, millions of people watched him on TV, hoping he would do miracles. The problem with miracles, though, is this. They don't occur when you're excavating in arid terrain. He was aware that he was at a turning point. He had two options. He could make a bold, dangerous move that could either ensure their futures forever or wreck them all in a single season. Or he could play it safe and remain in Scriber Creek and watch his multi-million-dollar enterprises slowly bleed out. This pressure caused him to begin thinking about Dominion Creek, a location that is hushedly discussed about the Klondike. We bought this place with the expectation that we would be able to sell some of our belongings to recover some of the purchase price. But we haven't done that yet. In actuality, that plant is worth $1 million. It was not merely an old-timer's story. It was supported by geological studies from reliable experts. Placer gold resources were said to still be abundant in the ground there. Take this. Dominion Creek was thought to contain gold valued at more than $160 million. His finest season ever was more than 10 times that. The money had the power to transform not only your life, but also the lives of your children's children. It was the ultimate reward. This one was a monster, but there's always a catch. This iconic claim came with an astounding $15 million price tag. $15 million, the point of no return. His workers had just earned that much in their season that broke all previous records. The amount of money was so enormous that it was difficult to comprehend. The amount demanded for Dominion Creek was a king's ransom. Parker struggled with the choice for weeks. Night after night, he paced his tiny cabin, looking at maps, crunching the figures, and attempting to predict the future. It was blatantly insane, according to the rational part of his brain. I still fervently hope that our choice to work with Australia Creek was the right one. Now we're in it. I am aware. I wonder if we'll feel that we shouldn't have done that at the end of the season. The likelihood is high. You don't stake the entire business on one piece of information. Regardless of the quality of the stories, the Klondike's history is filled with the dashed hopes of miners who lost everything. However, the miner's instinct, which had led him this far, was telling him something different. There were hints that this was a once-in-a-lifetime chance. You see, Parker didn't play it safe to get to where he is now. He took calculated, wise risks to build his empire. It wasn't just another risk, though. This involved leaping from a precipice and hoping to construct an aircraft while descending. He agonized over the decision before bringing in his most dependable crew members, the men who had supported him during the breakdowns and the mud. He explained everything to them. The terrible $15 million price tag, the enormous promise of Dominion, and the depleting gold at Scribner. There was silence in the room. They had two options: either stay and watch their operations gradually disappear, or take a chance on a fantasy that would make them all extremely wealthy. Late into the night, the conversation continued. Alex, his foreman, made the difficult enquiries. What if there was a different ground? What if it was too much for their equipment? What if the reports were wrong about the goal's location? There were no ideal solutions, therefore Parker didn't have any. It is therefore a gamble. But ultimately, it was his choice. He called. Dominion Creek would be his purchase. There was no going back once he approved the $15 million wire transfer and signed those documents. We've covered about 4 million square feet of Earth, more than halfway through. Our entire season now hinges on maintaining 2 plants for as long as feasible. After a year of arduous work, that money disappeared from his account. Dominion Creek, with all its potential and all its issues, was now his. It was an odd mixture of absolute horror and delight. The group was leaving the familiar territory of Scribner Creek and entering the unknown as they packed up the rest of their equipment. It was abnormally silent as the long convoy of vehicles and heavy machinery snaked its way to the new claim. Every member of that crew was aware that their lives had just been irrevocably altered. Parker's heart fell when they arrived at last. The location was enormous, covering a wide and challenging landscape. It was also totally undeveloped. Roads, wash plant pads, fuel storage, workshops, and everything else were all gone. They would have to start a multi-million-dollar mining operation from scratch because it was a blank slate in the middle of nowhere. That infrastructure alone would be extremely expensive to create. It wasn't even the worst part, though. It was Dominion's nasty joke. They were worse than Parker could have ever envisioned, and the issue began right away. As it happens, Scribner's was nothing like the Earth at Dominion Creek. They had to contend with a swamp rather than firm ground. The claim was in large parts a muddy, unstable mess. Their heavy, multi-ton equipment proved difficult to move every day. Dump trucks that weighed more than 50 tons would drown in a bottomless mud. Dozers were stuck all the time. A straightforward procedure that ought to have taken 20 minutes would take 5 hours to complete, consuming valuable time and thousands of dollars worth of diesel fuel. The team was exploding with frustration. They weren't a road construction crew engaged in a losing battle with mud, they were gold miners. They had to clear vast tracts of land and construct miles of new roads in order to put up their wash operations. I hope Parker feels the same way about this. We have to move a mountain of muck. We will definitely not be slewing this ground this season if we don't take action. Get on it and remain on it. Due to the need to transport each piece of pay dirt across considerably greater distances, their fuel expenses skyrocketed. They weren't washing gold for every hour they spent constructing and repairing. Time is literally money in the mining industry, and they were losing both at an alarming rate. Doubt began to seep into the crew members' eyes. Parker sensed it. He sensed it too. An exasperating worry that he had just committed the greatest error of his life. He was the leader, though. He was unable to display it. Even though his $15 million idea was slipping into obscurity, he needed to convey an unwavering confidence. Parker took a chance since he was desperate to start making some gold. He gave the group instructions to increase output by 20%. He reasoned that the gold must ultimately appear if they could simply push more dirt through the wash plants. More gold, more dirt. Easy maths, huh? However, Alex, his team commander, cautioned him that it was a recipe for trouble to push the machines that hard in these new, terrible conditions. Parker paid no attention. He was in charge, and he was determined to make this operation a success. It appeared to work at first. More material was being processed than ever before by the booming operations. Then, the disintegration began. Like a succession of knockout blows, they arrived in quick succession. One of the conveyor belts broke. A feeder then stuck completely. The primary water pump then failed totally. These fixes weren't minor ones. The entire operation came to a complete halt due to these disastrous errors. Hard rock mining is one of his main advantages in this situation. Drilling and blasting rock usually cost a lot of money. They were losing tens of thousands of dollars in potential gold with every hour of downtime. The weather turned savage, as if the equipment and the ground weren't working against them. Dominion Creek's harsh weather patterns were a result of its higher elevation. The muddy ground was transformed into a thick, soupy quicksand by heavy, unrelenting rain. Their devices suffered greatly from the ongoing dampness, leading to further malfunctions and costly repairs. On several days, they were unable to work at all and were compelled to sit in their trucks and observe the rain, knowing that every drop was eroding their earnings. The data were turning into a terrifying tale. They had virtually no gold to show for the millions of dollars they had invested and the thousands more they spent every day. The results of the first test cuts were so poor that they were nearly unreal. The turnaround of $1 million. Cleanouts were really depressing in the beginning. They were disastrous. Their first significant batches of dirt came up almost empty after weeks of battling muck, rain, and frequent breakdowns. You must comprehend the significance of this. For a handful of useless gold flakes, they had used tens of thousands of gallons of gasoline. Countless hours of labor pushed their equipment to the limit. The camp was in a gloomy mood. Parker's $15 million swagger appeared to be a complete failure. Additionally, his spreadsheet's red figures indicated that he was headed straight for bankruptcy. Puts us in a great position for the upcoming years. Because everyone has a position here next year, I truly want to thank you all from the bottom of my heart and hope that you all want to return. However, just when all seems hopeless, their worst fate handed them a lifeline. The crew discovered a change while excavating in a new location. Only seasoned miners could detect the tiny indication that the dirt had changed in color and texture. Nobody wanted to raise their hopes after so many disappointments. However, they continued with a fresh, shaky sense of direction. They fed their reliable wash plant, Slurfer, this new paid dirt. Everything changed as they completed the initial cleanup. There was more to the Sally box than just gold dust. It had a burden. It was this. The instant the risk began to pay off. Once a successful cut was found, the crew went into overdrive. Slurfer averaged an amazing 145 ounces per week while running non-stop for weeks. The moment of truth was the first significant weigh-in. When the hallways from Slurfer and Big Red were combined, the sum was astounding. 74 ounces of pure gold. That's almost $1.4 million, or more than 45 pounds of gold. Cheers erupted throughout the camp. It was not just a beginning. It demonstrated that the gold was present and that they possessed the necessary skills to obtain it. When a headline-grabbing weigh-in like that is displayed, it's simple to think, wow, they hit the jackpot overnight. However, that isn't telling the whole story. The weeks of ruthless, spirit-crushing failure that preceded it are seen when the layers are removed. You witness a weary, mud-covered team on the verge of surrender. They made a fortune out of a calamity, but the season is far from over. Was this enormous weigh-in an indication of real success, or only a fortunate break before a more serious issue arose? Please share your ideas in the comments section below, and remember to like and subscribe.